Most of the outcomes I described previously, whether it's around cost efficiencies or by driving front office optimization and productivity and efficiency levels, dependent to some extent on technology. And where we see this changing, it's either with clients that are trying to do more with the technology they already have, so making it more effective, more efficient, or it's about choosing new solutions, finding other ways of solving the same problem, or it is really sort of starting to think out of the box and really looking to innovate in their operating model, in their business model, to leverage new technologies and bring that to bear on their business model and the way they operate in the market. I think from Orbium we're in an excellent position to be able to assist across all three of those areas. As I mentioned before, our bread and butter and the foundations of our firm have very much been focused around the seamless execution and the market-leading execution of transformational change for core banking implementation and also developing and building out those platforms. The other area where Orbium's uniquely positioned is in the partnerships that they have with fintechs and regtechs, whether that's through working agreements or whether that's through direct investments. We have a lot of expertise and knowledge that we can bring to bear to solving specific client problems, whether that be around portfolio management, cross-border compliance, data models. We have a large number of partners that we work with that we feel supports the overall technology landscape that private banks and wealth managers are working in. I think the other area where we do have expertise is starting to look at the wave of new innovation, whether that's in distributed ledgers and the use of blockchain, whether that's in machine learning, in the early steps of artificial intelligence and robo-advisory, or other technologies that may be coming along that at the moment are not seen as being specific to financial services, but the types of technologies that we're seeing coming out of the firms such as Amazon and Google, they are going to start migrating into the financial services. So bringing in people who have experience of those markets, of those technologies, clearly helps us maintain a strong foundation in technology and innovation going forward. I think there's been a huge shift in that perception. I mean, when I was working with my previous employer, one of the roles I had was sort of the risk owner for disruption risk. So one of the things we looked at was what was happening in the fintech industry and other industries and other technologies starting to come through. And in those days, maybe 5-6 years ago, the perception was one of fear. It was one of eating into value chain, into our market, taking sort of our slice of the pie. I think the change has been very much a view that that's no longer the case. The risk is not that these technologies and these firms are going to sort of undermine the commercials or the viability of the traditional banking models, but it's very much more a view that the capabilities that these technologies and these firms bring are going to be core to the way that any financial services institute operates in the future going forward. So I think it's a recognition on both sides, both from the banks that recognize the value of the technology, but also from the technology firms that recognize the value of the client base and the balance sheet of established banks. It's going to be much more around building that symbiotic relationship. And I think the winners in the market going forward are going to be the cases where these two sides of the same, these two sides of the industry are able to work best together. So I think the hot topics in technology innovation at the moment, it depends on who you talk to. So if you talk to operations teams, there's always a lot of talk around RPA, so sort of robotizing and being able to automate a lot of the manual processes that they currently undertake. If you talk to quants or portfolio managers, there's questions around how they can use big data and data analytics to be able to make more informed decisions around investment. And then there's the whole area of what we can call direct to consumer. So, how can we get individuals, clients, having more direct access to some of the services and advice that wealth managers and private banks have traditionally given. Other areas such as, sort of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, those sorts of things. I think there's embedded within that capability or within those technologies, there's clearly capabilities that can be used. For example, in blockchain, we're seeing it used much more from a sort of a commercial banking perspective in terms of being able to set up letters of credit and to be able to transact globally in a secure way. I think other technologies that will obviously become more and more prevalent are also around the security. So dealing with a cyber threat, dealing with fraud, scammers. So how you use technology, whether it's using biorecognition, whether it's using sort of sophisticated ways to combat hacking or phishing or all the other things that are sort of threatening confidence in the industry for individual clients. I think again will be another key area around how you sort of how you build those capabilities out in the future. The challenge in machine learning and artificial intelligence is you're now effectively asking a black box to make these decisions, and it's a black box that's constantly adapting and taking information it knows from the market, from the client, from big data, from all the information that's available, and it's tweaking and fine-tuning the recommendations that it makes, or the output, whether it's a recommendation to a client or whether it's rebalancing a portfolio or whether it's even making a sort of a pay no pay decision on behalf of a credit card company. It's constantly changing the rules, constantly changing the algorithms. And if for whatever reason there's a complaint or an issue or a problem, and you have to try and understand and explain to the regulator or even to the client why a particular piece of advice was given, by definition it's very difficult, if not impossible, to sort of unwind and go back to the original logic that led to that decision being made. And the way you could do with sort of traditional algorithms and decision trees and all the rest of it, but with this technology makes that all very difficult. So I think there's a role for the regulator to play in terms of being able to understand what sort of information needs to be retained, how you store historic transactions, how you store historic advice. And that also talks to things like senior manager regime, because if you're using that type of technology to make fairly significant, substantial decisions about how you run your company, then being able to stand there in front of a common select committee and say, sort of and explain why you did X, Y, and Z, sort of the answer of, well, there was a sort of a piece of code over here that told me that's what I should be doing. We can't understand why it said that, but it said it at the time and we felt it was right. That becomes more difficult to be able to justify and understand. So I think that whole area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, will clearly be in the industry for the long term, but how it operates in the industry, I think, is going to be the real challenge.